Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Northeast Scene Podcast. My name is Keith.
I'm Tommy.
And we are here once again. This is episode 3. Join us on a wonderful, magical journey. And we have a very special guest today. Someone I've looked up to musically probably since I was like 16, since I discovered his band through friends of mine, and this day forward credit this band for them becoming a band and starting to play from their mutual admiration of this band. A good friend, a good comrade, a fellow musician who I've played with, Pat Shannon from Allelsefailed.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for that effusive intro. That was,
yes.
I feel already, we could just wrap it here. All right. See
All right. Thank you guys so much. Check us out. No. All right. So thanks again for being here.
No sweat, man.
We're
Happy
here in Center City, Philadelphia. We are recording the first batch of these shows, and I have a gigantic hotel room that I managed to finagle, and it's been a lot of fun. It's always good to be back here.
It's wild, dude. When you first opened the doors here, I was like, this is one room. It's unbelievable.
It is a beautiful view. I will say that for sure.
Oh, we've got views for days. We've got like 4 separate rooms. Like it's But you've already heard about the room, so let's move right into it. Pat, one thing we like to ask all of our guests is your intro to hardcore. Now, for me, for Tommy, it's a defining moment because I remember the first show and just how it shaped my life and all that stuff. So tell us about your intro to the scene.
Wow. I could go like super deep dive with this and get really long-winded.
Please do.
So the first thing I remember, I was always just a music head just from the time I was born. My mom was listening to like classical music albums, and I was just so super into that stuff. And just even as a kid, like I never thought it was weird. I just loved opera and just like it was just cool. I don't know, that's what my mom's into. I'm into it. They weren't really like rockers or anything. They were more into that stuff. And then like popular music and rock and roll and classic rock or whatever like came from my cousins. Mm-hmm. And I remember being at my cousin's in Upper Darby, and my older cousin Dennis had like a basement tape, and I guess he was maybe 6 years older than me, so I was maybe like 8 or 9 at the time, and he was just getting into high school. And they had like a basement tape of, I think it was like the Dead Milkmen playing like a Philly show, but it was like a tape of like somebody went to a show and just made a tape and we were listening to it on the boombox. So like from day one, the notion of like, oh, I can just do a band and I can just make a tape. Like it was never like this big thing. Like obviously there's like rock star, like, oh, I want to be like Iron Maiden. But it was always in my head that like I can just do a band whenever, you know what I mean? It's not like this big unattainable thing. So that was like the very, very first like inkling of the underground world. Like I always just sort of knew the underground was there because like I heard tapes of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
even before hardcore, like the alternative boom.
Yeah,
that was sure. Like, and then I was like, oh, I want to play guitar and I can learn and I want to be in a band. Like how old heads described seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I think it was the same for us in like Nirvana and all those bands
and all that stuff right in that era. But so then, right, so, fast forward a few years from that experience to exactly what you're talking about, like, just my older brother, God bless him, he wasn't like super in tune with like culture and music and such. We liked a lot of the same stuff, but he wasn't like obsessive about it. So we would just watch MTV. We would just watch, and every night I remember as kids, it was like Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night was Yo MTV Raps, Headbangers Ball, and 120 Minutes. And like I like took in all 3 of them with equal like fervor. Like I loved each one of them equally, and like that was very passionate about all forms of music. So I was always coming at it from like a sort of like rounded place, but that wasn't always necessarily the thing. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't. Nowadays you're just like, what are you talking about? Everybody listens to everything all the time, but it wasn't. It was a little more. Wasn't how it always was back then. But more to the point was then when we got to Bonner, I met Luke and Luke's older brother, and that was the way more direct influence was Luke's older brother, who introduced us to like Fugazi, and that was about it. Like from Fugazi, it was just over. You know what I mean? And speaking of which, I went to see Ian's new band the other night.
How was that?
It was really interesting, man. It was cool. They did this weird tour of like Fredericksburg, Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yeah, it was like
Harrisburg.
off-market places, which I love.
So weird. And they played at a bookstore, and there was like it was appropriately crowded. It wasn't insanely crowded. It was like 120, 150 people maybe, and it was cool. I mean, you know, to be in the same room with like that iconic voice, just like when he opened his mouth, I was like, holy shit. Okay.
There it is.
Because I'd only seen Fugazi once in my life, so to see it, to be in close quarters with it was definitely like a fanboy moment. But so Luke's older brother, Billy, really put us on to all that stuff. And, I was coming into high school just on a mission to be like, I'm going to do music. That's going to be my thing. I'm just going to do it. Meeting the Muir brothers, Luke and Billy. So Luke's older brother was in the same grade as my older brother. So they knew each other, and I knew Luke. So it was kind of like we just like, we didn't really hang out much, but we like in school we knew each other. So like there was no like awkwardness to talk to Billy Muir, or whatever, you know what I mean? Because he was talking to my brother or whatever.
Right.
So and I just like pinned like on Luke. I just saw Luke. I was like, "You're gonna be my singer, man. You're my dude." Like, and he was way more into like they were making movies a lot. They were doing like pre-Jackass kind of stuff, I guess, but like a little more scripted out, but just like stupid little shorts like on a VHS. Again, shit kids can do on their phone nowadays all day, every day. But back then it took like effort to actually get.
You had to know someone with the equipment.
With the equipment, you had to get like 4 guys to show up and do your little whatever. So they were really into that, and Luke was just super into like acting and wanted to be in movies. So we'd like join the play together and stuff like that.
Wow.
We were in school plays together, and which was cool because unknowingly to us, that's where all like the alternative rockers were and all the girls in Doc Martens and stuff were. So
that's where you want to be.
It was 100%. We more so than we even knew. It was where we really wanted to be. So Luke did take a little convincing. He said, "I don't sing." I was like, "Well, we're gonna do like heavy music, man. Like you don't really need to sing. Just like go for it. Like you want to act. That's all about going for it. So like just go for it. And so he and I like pretty early on ended up teaming up with. Skater kid in our class that we knew we were like high school, it's like, oh, you're into what I'm into, you're into what I'm into, you're into, like, it's pretty obvious who your people are if you're people like us. And we teamed up with him. His name was Chris. He was a fantastic bass player, and we just went, and that was like, so like some of my first experiences in hardcore were me doing it, you know what I mean? Like I think Luke's older brother took me to see Rollins and COC at the Trock, which again, like it just totally blurred any like quote unquote rock star mentality. It's like, no, man, this is a punk show, but this dude's on MTV too. It's like, this is happening, you know what I mean? This is what's going on. So.
Yeah, my first experiences with hardcore spoiled me forever. Like I won't, like Rage Against the Machine is touring. I'm like, I'm not gonna go. First of all, I don't have $400.
Oh, I did buy tickets.
I did. But I
couldn't Run the Jewels. I had to see Run the Jewels.
But second of all, I can't just sit there while Rage Against the Machine is playing. Like,
Very
what,
true.
I'm going to sit in a seat and go like this?
Yeah.
While
right.
Sleep Now in the Fireplace?
You're
No,
right.
I need to, like, jump on somebody's head.
No, you're 100% right.
And the hardcore is, like, one of the only musics that, like, encourages crowd participation.
Yeah.
I'm spoiled by that.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I need that.
It was, it took a lot to go on StubHub and drop, like, $3.20 for 2 tickets.
I almost did it.
I did it.
I almost did it, but I backed out.
We're actually going to the DC show, which is during midweek, so we're making a vacay out of it. I was like, well, you wouldn't not pay $300 for a vacation, right?
Yeah.
So just
that's a good.
That was my
that's a
bonus.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I justified it to myself.
It is always funny when you show like every year when I come back from This Is Hardcore and I come from shows, especially like one of your guys' shows, like I'll show people I work with.
Mm-hmm.
I work in a middle school,
right.
So like I show people like what I did, and they're like, "What the fuck you guys need on stage?"
Well, it's funny, Luke. Luke. I guess we can probably talk about his profession. He's in law enforcement in California. His title has changed a handful of times. I'm not truthfully 100% sure what his current role is. But in his work life, people, he has hard ass superiors who are like, "What the fuck is this?" It's like, "Muir, what were you doing?" And he laughs about it, but like they give him a hard time. But by the same token, I think a lot of people see and they'll say to like, "This is hardcore." Like, "Oh shit, there was like several thousand people there." It's like, "Yeah, man, we did this, we do this." You know what I mean? It's not. It wasn't to the level, and we talk about that a lot, even on the last tour we did. It's like, yeah, it never got to the, like maybe that next level or the next level beyond that, but like we did it on a level we're all comfortable with, and we can still get really good opportunities to do things like the Boy Sets Fire tour that they just took us to Europe, and it was just first time we'd been there and just blew our minds. So, you know, it's cool that things worked out that we're still able to do it, you know, and it's, you know, I wouldn't trade it.
It's still happening.
Yeah,
it's still happening.
Yeah. And it's weird. We were one of those bands that maybe we were always doomed to be posthumously more popular than we were when it was going, but it really did happen for us. And all of that was like Joe Hardcore and Sonny Singh from Hate 5-6. You know, Joe Hardcore put us on This Is Hardcore, I believe it was 2011 was the first one.
Yep.
And Sonny had just really started going like
full board,
on into filming everything.
I think that's when he discovered you guys.
Yeah,
I remember him
that
posting that recently.
I think that was the set that he discovered us, and just from then on, he's been just a huge supporter. So Joe and Sonny combined gave us this whole second win for sure.
So going back to the beginning, you said you were playing with Luke and this other guy. Chris.
Yeah.
Was it just the three of you?
So we had a few different drummers. Our buddy Dave, who is still a good friend. We don't hang out too much anymore, but I saw him. Actually went to see Mastodon and Primus with him last year. But you know, I see him maybe once a year. He was the drummer at first, and then we got a guy named Barry who is just a really cool guy. And then the lineup sort of fluctuated back and forth. And then Chris went to college in Scranton.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, us being from Upper Darby and Luke and I started going to school in Westchester. We were like, well, I guess that's the end of the band. It didn't really seem practical to try to do it, you know, on any sort of bi-coastal level. But then Luke and I went up to bi-coastal, you know. Yeah, I say bi-coastal. We're doing the band bi-coastally now. Yeah, we couldn't overcome 100 miles back in the day. Now we're doing,
Forget about it.
Yeah, right. But Luke and I went up to visit Chris, and we went to a show. So Chris ended up hanging out with guys in Scranton in a band called Option. That was like a really popular Northeast Pennsylvania band. And somebody in Option used to be in VOD. He was like, I think VOD for a long time didn't have a bass player because that guy left and joined Option when he went to school in Scranton. And so VOD would come and play in Scranton like constantly. This guy was still buddies with him, and they would. So we went up to see VOD. I think it was just Luke and I, and hang out with Chris, and like we sort of caught the vibes. We're like, oh man, we should have kept going. We can do it. Like, what the hell? We spoke to our drummer Barry. He didn't want to do it anymore. So that's when we found Paul.
Yes.
And totally random. We were just at Westchester and just mentioned to somebody offhand that like we were looking for a drummer, and my friend Barb was like, I know this guy named Paul I went to high school with, and just like back in the day, just give me his number. There's no Facebook, nothing.
You just call, yeah.
Cold call, man. That's how I got all my sales experience. It was just cold calling kids.
Will you be in the band?
Yeah, exactly.
We need someone.
So
was that what? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Hate to Say It?
That was
before All Else Failed.
That was Hate to Say It. Yeah.
Yes.
So the initial version of the band that Luke and I started way back when it was in Bonner in high school, it was called Arguing with Echoes, which.
That sounds very deep.
Well, it was so embarrassing for so long, and then like 5 years ago, I was like, "Yo, that's like the illest thing I ever came up with." It's like now that like Prague is cool again, I was like, "Yo, that's ill." But yeah, I was listening to like Rush and stuff like that, so that's where that came from. But obviously, that wasn't a very practical name, so I think we had a demo tape out. But then we changed the name to Hate to Say It. We did a CD, which again at the time was showing major ambition. Like CD wasn't easy to do at the time, so but we self-released it. I think we borrowed like $1,000 off my older brother, and we put like 8-song CD. Like half of it was cool, half of it was whack. Mm-hmm. Then we broke up. Then we decided to get back together. Barry didn't want to do it. We recruited Paul, and we put out the Hate to Say It tape.
Okay.
Which was light years better than the CD, and was really a precursor to All Else Failed. That's like when we were writing what would become All Else Failed music.
Stylistically, how was it? Was it different? Was it like...
It was way more straightforward. There weren't that many time signature changes or anything, but it was still very much of, you know, if you heard it, you might be like, oh, that's kind of like All Else Failed. Like, that's not... Like,
yeah.
It's not light years away. Like, it's not night and
like,
day.
All Else Failed was definitely... We got more into, like abrasive, noisy, off-timey kind of stuff. We introduced 2 singers. It was like... The difference was like I could pinpoint the difference. The difference was Neurosis. In between the two, we discovered Neurosis, and so
I remember you saying they were a major influence.
Yeah, huge influence. So Hate to Say It was like take the Neurosis influence out of All Is Failed because we hadn't heard them yet. So Hate to Say It was way more straightforward, but it was a lot of fun. Really good stuff, and that broke up somewhat acrimoniously. It was just weird. We just ended up Luke and I ended up just having a sort of falling out. I guess there was probably some like of that 18, 19-year-old jealousy of Chris was up in Scranton. He joined Option by this point and was doing that band. And not that we didn't really necessarily care about that, but we were like, man, we can barely do what we're doing anyway, and now you're in another band. And then we had a show booked with Autumn up at CC's, I think, and I forget exactly how it went down, but we just didn't make it there. Like, we essentially broke up on the way. I think Luke had even, like, rented a U-Haul truck for it or something, and we just, like, that night we returned and we're like, okay, well, we're done with Hate to Say It, and we're going to start something new. But by that time, we had already worked. We were working at U-Haul with Steve Wigant, who then that's when All Is Failed started.
And that's for the audience who is not aware, the current bass player,
yes,
all-time bass
player. So All Is Failed is All Is Failed is who is in it at the time, but but All Is Failed is also me, Luke,
the core
Steve.
group is
it's
you,
me, Luke, and Steve.
Yes,
we and when we teamed up with Steve, and Steve, like in later conversations, was always like, "Man, I was hoping like you would just like, move on." With Hate to Say It, I would just join as bass player, but we were just so done and just like kind of bummed about the way it worked out. And looking back, we actually did let a couple pretty good songs go with Hate to Say It that we maybe should have kept or maybe should have I don't know.
Right.
But you know how it is in the world. It's like, no, it's already out on a tape. It's like, who cares? No one ever heard that. So we could just take it. But it's like, yo, the whole world already knows about it.
Yeah.
Whatever, it's on tape,
no one's heard it. It's fine. Redo it.
But so Luke and Steve worked together at U-Haul. They were like, all right. Luke went back and told Steve, it's like, yeah, Hate to Say It's done. And Steve was not his band at the time, 5-0. I think there was later on, there was a new metal band called 5.0. Not the same band. Steve's high school band was called 5-0, and they just ruled. They were so awesome. We loved them so much. But that was starting to fall apart. So it was like kind of obvious. It's like, all right, we're going to do this, right? Yeah, it was like, all right. And then he had started playing in another project with Dave Sesso, and he's like, well, I'm talking about doing this band with Dave, and I'm talking about doing your guys' band. And we're like, well, we're talking about doing something just completely different, and you want to do like a 2-singer thing? And like, you're like, yeah, fuck it, let's see what happens. And
now, that's one of our questions. Yeah. How, because I this seemed to be kind of a thing in the late 90s. Was it, were other bands doing it then too that you were aware of?
I can honestly fully say that when we did that, we did not know of any other bands that were doing that. Within 8 months of our existence, we were playing with like 2 other bands that were doing it. So it must have been something in
maybe
the water.
Maybe you were
at
the
time.
First.
Well, no, I think it was something in the water at the time. It was definitely like very like doing experimental shit was like less frowned upon at the time, I guess, or
maybe
not
like
that it was ever you know what I'm saying. It was just like
it was just more something that kind of came out organically.
Bands were trying to get a little more out there, and that was just one way. That
maybe like they had too many people, but they just didn't have the heart to tell someone to go home.
Yeah,
so it's like give them a microphone.
Or this guy owned the PA or whatever. No, it was. But no, so that's how that came about was, and I think Luke like had a lot of like song ideas where like I was going to do backups and I was like, well, let's just get so the original lineup was just myself, Luke, Steve, Dave Sesso, and we didn't have a drummer. Mm-hmm. We were hesitant to get Paul right off the bat because we didn't want it to be just like Hate to Say It without Chris. You know, in retrospect, I don't know necessarily why that would have mattered too much, but we were very hesitant to ask Paul. But then we did, and it was like, oh, okay, obviously this is the guy we should ask from the get-go. So, because we played with a couple, like, honestly, we cycled through a lot of the same guys that Hate to Say It had. My buddy Dave played for a couple, never shows, but like writing practices and stuff. And but then Paul joined, and we had 3 songs and put out a 7-inch, and off we went.
One take Paul, I call him.
Yeah,
he's just solid.
Yeah, just unbelievably solid, and he gave a lot to our sound. But we had already like. In Hate to Say It, he was really learning how to play. Like, he was always really, really good, but he was just developing his style. By the time it came time to do All Is Failed, it was like, forget about it. The dude was a monster. And so he took us from, like, we were okay. Paul joined. We were like, okay, now we're really on to something. Let's make moves. Like, maybe 6 months later, we had, like, after the first 7-inch, Steve's brother Bobby joined, and that was like the first 6-piece, like quote unquote, like classic lineup was me, Luke, Steve, Bobby, Dave Sesso, and Paul was the first like 6-piece lineup.
Now I remember hearing about those early shows. I got into you guys from Most Bitter Season.
Yep.
You know, Burster was like a classic song.
Yeah.
It still is.
That's
like that
drum
intro.
line is amazing.
Yeah.
When you first hear that, it's
Yeah, and that ending, like I Know a Life Once Lost, just took that ending and just
They did.
put it in their demo. It's
Yeah.
like the dun 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 dun, dun. Like it's just it's a classic
Dog.
song. So I remember hearing tales about like how crazy your shows were, and I was like a hardcore junkie at the time, like
Right.
not like drug kind yet,
Yeah.
but like I just always wanted to find the craziest show, and like I just like I would hear tales of like All's Failed, and like like you guys would like fight like during the set, and so my question wraps around to that. Like I remember hearing stories like with fighting and just all this stuff. Like what was the deal with that? Because I didn't see those early shows.
Yeah, it never, like, we never did anything fully pre-planned. We like, and a lot of people like after the fact like would give us grief. It's like, oh, it's like going to see like backyard wrestling or whatever.
Yeah, because I see some pictures where there's like masks and like,
Oh well,
stuff.
so that show specifically was that was pre-planned. That was a Halloween show with Ink and Dagger up at Middlesex, and that was part of speaking to Luke's flair for the dramatic and wanting to be an actor and everything. We're like, we're playing a Halloween show. We're going to. Yeah,
with Ink and Dagger. I mean, come on.
So we were all dressed up as like, I guess like ghouls that you would see in that band Ghost now or whatever. Like that's basically how we were dressed. And Luke built like a gallows and hung himself. It had Dave Sesso hang him actually.
That's beautiful.
And like not everybody was in on it, and everybody like it looked maybe too real, and like people were upset and stuff. So so that one was pre-planned. But like the typical like show where it was just chaotic, it was like literally chaotic because we could barely play. Like Paul was probably at that point like far above and beyond us as musicians. Steve was always really good. I was just like figuring out how to play.
Right.
Even Hate to Say It days. I remember the big difference between the Hate to Say It CD and the tape is I figured out how to palm mute. You know what I mean? So we weren't very good players. We were becoming good players. We were finding it out. But it was always high energy. Was always very, very high on the priority list. And we saw bands like Dead Guy or Turmoil just go and just destroy rooms, and we were like, yeah, that's what we want to do. But when you have two singers and they're running around, you know what I mean? Maybe there's only so much space and one gets pissed at the other. Yeah. There was never, like, I only remember 1 or 2 times where actual punches were thrown, but there was,
just once or twice.
Yeah, just once or twice. But we were always cool after. I don't think anybody was ever really bummed at anybody else. But our mentality was, if the show's not going well, make there be something to look at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that was really that was the only thing. If we were killing the show, we weren't going to fight. The show was going off the rails and somebody felt they had to do something, things would happen.
Nice. So I remember I didn't get a chance to see you guys. I see all those videos all the time that like Delaware 90s hardcore post. And I never caught any of the Two Singer shows. It just
that site's great, by the way.
I know. We were talking about them in the first episode. Shout out again, Delaware 90s hardcore.
Crisscrossed.
And I missed those early shows, and I just didn't hear about you guys. I think my friend booked you guys at Yardley Firehouse.
Okay.
I think that was the first time I saw you. Now, there was I had a big expectations in my mind because I remember Two Singers, craziness, all this stuff, and this was probably the least attended show I've ever seen. I think there was like 4 people there, maybe less.
Yeah, that would happen.
Yeah, and I just, and I don't remember the set really, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like I just.
Were we still Two Singers at the time?
No.
Or? Okay.
This may have been right around when it became one, or this was probably like 98, 99.
I kind of feel like I remember that show a little bit. For some reason, I have this weird, weird blips of memory of shows like when you say Firehouse, like I do remember being. And we were joking before we started this that I refer to everything north of Philadelphia as Doylestown.
That's right near
because
Doylestown.
I have no idea where anything is. So it's like I think I remember playing somewhere up by Doylestown.
Somewhere in Doylestown.
On this is the craziest, stupidest random memory, but the day Howard Stern announced he got divorced. I had no idea why I remember this. I remember hearing it like on the news and then going up to play the show or whatever.
Yeah.
Of all dumb memories.
That was big news at the time.
Well, we could actually we could probably date the show with that information. But I do remember playing that Firehouse, and it does ring a bell to me as being in that era where Dave left. And we decided we weren't going to replace him with another singer. We had started to do more like sample stuff, neurosis-y kind of stuff. We got our buddy Johnny Moran to help us do that stuff. And Johnny Moran was a fairly short-term member, but had some great contributions. Like he really helped us construct, and I think even wrote some of the sample parts that we use for like Did You Think of Me and stuff like that. So like huge songs that we still play to this day, like Johnny was a big part of.
Yes. Now that 3-song EP.
Yes.
Now there was a long period where I didn't see you, and I had heard Most Bitter Season and all that, and my friend, I don't know, he either stole CDs from a distro or he just got them somehow.
Right.
And I saw there was that 3-song EP.
Yes. In Times of Desperation.
Yes. Yeah. That I was like, oh, All's Failed. Let's check this out. And I put it on, and I was blown away. I was like, what the? I was like, what
definitely, that was definitely taking it to the next level. And this is going to sound like mean to Dave Sesson. I don't mean it this way at all, but it was addition by subtraction in the regards of, I think, what we were doing with the 2-singer version, the noisy, like we did that as far as we could do it, and like we were trying to jam too many different things into it.
It was the more like late '90s emo-ish, like
spaz out on the floor, kick stuff over, and we were doing that, and it was a lot of fun. Dave sort of lost interest in it, and again, I love what Dave brought to the band, but when he left, it became more streamlined, and like it made the jump to it in Times of Desperation happen by letting us, okay, we just have a singer, you just have one singer now. He's going to take care of everything. We're going to incorporate a little more of the samples in, but it really, and not coincidentally, we were writing better songs. We were getting better at our instruments, and Steve wrote, I think, 90% of that EP, and Steve was just starting to get on a different planet. I was like, fuck, I better.
It was a huge leap forward. I remember showing it to everybody, and I was like, I got to see these guys again.
I can still barely play some of those songs, by the way. Like we came up with versions, Steve's original riffs. We were like, okay, how about we do it like this?
Yeah.
I don't think Your Days Are Numbered, which is the second song on that CD, like I don't think that exists in a time signature. I don't think you can even count that out. Like I have no idea how we play that riff. It's just like, now it's ingrained in my memory, but
it's like muscle memory.
Yeah.
Like you just feel it. Like sometimes I listen to a 9-minute song and I'm like, how do they do that? But I've written 9-minute songs and played on them. It's like you just feel it.
Right.
You know when it's time.
And we were big on feel, and that's something that lineup really had. Like by that point, we were just so locked in with Paul, and we could write stuff like that, and it just went to the next level. Those 3 songs really took it. But then we just started getting rolling in that formation, and then Paul left, so we had to get another drummer, and we got a guy named Dave Clank, who was awesome. Dave was from the northern suburbs, Doylestown. Now, I'm just kidding. I think he was actually from Ambler, which is right near Doylestown.
It's all Doylestown to me, like anywhere north of like Warminster.
Yeah. So Dave Clank joined. He was from up that way, but he was in some Upper Darby bands that we were playing with prior to all this. He knew a lot of guys that like we went to school with and such, and he joined. And, we tried not to miss a beat. I mean, it was Paul. It was just like taking, Steve, myself, and Paul were just writing at a level at that point that we were super locked in, and then just to take the drummer out and put it different. It wasn't fair to Dave to expect it to be perfect, But he did a great job with it. He recorded Archetype with us, but then trying to write, we were just like, we wanted to go one way. Dave just wasn't really feeling it, and so he ended up leaving. We were in a stage of like eternal lineup changes at that point. But somewhere in there, it definitely became like, okay, it's me, Luke, and Steve, sort of.
Yeah, and I remember.
I hate to say calling the shots. That sounds so dicky, but
someone has to
deciding the direction, of
running the show. I guess. Yeah.
But I remember. I guess it was around 99, 2000 was when I started seeing you guys live again. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't remember where I was. I think it was like a house show somewhere. And this guy, I think he worked for Now or Never Records or something. And he had Archetype. Mm-hmm. He had it like before it came out.
Oh, okay.
And he had Dillinger's Calculating Infinity.
Okay.
Before they came out.
Sure.
And he's like showing it to people on a Discman. And I listened to each of them and I'm like, oh my God, listen to this. Like,
so that was probably that era, the Archetype era. And that was when I look back at all the eras of the band, I think that's when I was the most fond of being in the band. Because up until that point, it was a bit of a struggle. Like we had all the confidence in the world that we were like on to something cool and on to something different, but we weren't getting a ton of love. And you know, it's a long time to do a band. We're like a band 4 years at this point without getting a whole lot of really
like traction. Like
and
it's weird because I remember seeing you on shows that you opened for, I don't know, Dillinger or Candieri or someone at Chrome, and
that was a little later. That's when we did start to catch some traction. But like prior to that, we didn't, and a lot of it came out of, it was kind of our upbringing, like from Hate to Say It through, you know, Hate to Say It in 5-0, joining forces and becoming allelsefailed, like brought it back to like Upper Darby. And there was this weird thing at the time when it was like, and I don't know, it probably still exists to some degree. I'm not as in tune as I used to be, but there was like almost like purity tests for hardcore. It's like, oh, is that a real hardcore band? And it's like, I don't know, man. We played the Speakeasy and we listened to Clutch, and you know what I mean? Like, and we fucking love Biohazard. You know what I mean? So it's like, but by the same time, we were like trying to get on church shows, and like we were friends with all those guys too. But like I Hate You and you know, guys in Knotwork that went on to be in like Kid Dynamite, and you know, the what became like the real Philly early 2000s Philly hardcore scene.
Yes,
we were sort of not invited. You know what I mean? And it was, I don't know if it was like, oh, those are metal weirdos or whatever, but then also in the metal weirdo scene, the Speakeasy, it was like, oh, that's just like a hardcore band. They're not, like, you know what I mean? So it was like, but we were friends with everybody, and as we got better, everybody was much more accepting of us. So there was a long time frame where Philly didn't really feel us, I guess. Which
is weird, and I remember feeling that too, because I'm like, why? Like, these guys should be on everything.
Right. Like, well, to be fair, we weren't always that great. So the first 2 years wasn't everybody.
But I'm thinking of the archetype era. Now, is that the era in your mind where like it kind of all came together?
Yeah.
And tell us about getting on to Now or Never and putting out that record and recording it, because a lot of bands, when I hear interviews, they just kind of jump right to we're on tour. Like I've never been in a band that's been signed.
Right.
I've never been on a tour, so I'm curious about the process to getting to that point.
Sure. So we did start to catch some traction prior to all this when we got Dave as our drummer. Like for the first, so the 3-song came out. The last thing we did with Paul was In Times of Desperation. That got put out on a label called Alone Records, who, for the life of me, I can't remember how he found us. Really cool guy named Andy. Forget what show he saw us at, but he wanted to put that out. So we put that out. We played, I do remember we played, I want to say at the Kill Time and I think it ended up being our last show with Paul. And we had In Times of Desperation, and we gave it to Keith and Hell, who did Hellfest in Syracuse.
Yes.
And I believe, I don't know if Maddie Beckerman was there or not, or if Keith gave the CD to Maddie Beckerman, who ran Now or Never Records. So In Times of Desperation's out. Now or Never Records gets a hold of it. Keith and Hell has it. We start playing Hellfest and stuff. So that was like a huge thing for us to finally start playing in front of like bigger crowds.
Now, quick interjection. I remember that Hellfest. I remember you specifically at that show, and that was when Luke, I think he got hit in the face too. Yeah. We were talking to Mike Shaw in our last episode, and he got hit in the face and was bleeding.
That same one?
And same, it's like a Philly thing, I guess.
So that one, I think that was Hellfest 2000.
Yes.
And
same Hellfest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So future Hellfest, it almost got canceled, but they saved that one somehow. But it all got jammed into one room.
Yes.
So bands only had so we had 4 songs. We had a 20-minute set.
I remember that every band had like 3 or 4 songs.
So we got up there and we did our best, and it went really, really well. Maddie Beckerman decided to sign us, but so in that time frame that we were starting to play, we were finally getting, and really it came, like I joke about Doylestown, but it was Lansdale was the spot. We had a couple guys up there, Mark Meebus, who ended up booking us in Philly a lot, but Meebus started like real like northern suburbs, just Lansdowne VFW or Lansdale VFW, I think it was.
One of those.
Yeah.
Well, the Lansdowne's the one that's out by like
West Philly. That's where we grew up. Yeah. That's Lansdowne. Lansdale is. We ended up playing Lansdale like every weekend for a year, and and then I think a lot of those kids moved to Philly, so it's like we sort of took like the back door into Philly acceptance, I guess. But yeah, so around that time, like people were starting to come out to our shows. We were getting much, much better as a band. We just put out the best release that we probably ever put out, and Maddie Beckerman got a hand of it and was like, let's go. Let's he had just put out the Dillinger release, but Dillinger was already moving on the Relapse, I believe, at that time. And I guess maybe he thought we were like the next band to step up and fill that void on his roster.
Yes.
And but he was super tight with all those guys. So he had like Ben record Archetype with us. Ben produced that.
We're talking about Ben Weinman
Yes.
from Dillinger. So was he like in the studio helping
Yep.
you and shit?
Yeah. He produced that record from like we tried to do it as pro as possible. It was our first experience like making a record. We went up and stayed in New Jersey for a week in a hotel and went to the studio every day. And we're like, wow, we're making like a pro record here. And
Yeah.
in retrospect, we probably gave up a little too much control to Ben because he was our dude. We played with those guys a bunch, so we knew Ben, and
Yeah.
he was the man. We loved him. We were going to do anything he said because we were just like, well, we're paying him to produce it. We're going to let him do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
In retrospect, we're like, we probably should have kept some of our own tones and some of our own, you know what I mean? It sounds a little. It probably sounds like a Dillinger record by a band that can't play anywhere near as well as Dillinger. So, long story short, but he did a great job with it. I mean,
It's still a great. I've revisited it again recently, and it's still just tons of hits. And like I remember when that record came out, they some website Now or Never or something dropped the In Time MP3, and I remember it was a different version that was on the record, and that was like a very, very memorable song.
Yeah, that one. So we were like, I guess it's so the difference between labels nowadays. Like back in the day, doing an indie label, like it was cooler to be as pro as possible. Now an indie label just wants to put out vinyl and has nothing to do with like being in Tower Records or whatever, you know what I mean, or whatever. But back in the day, it was like, no, they wanted like we have to go in and do instrumental versions just in case they want to use it in a commercial or something. We're like, or put you in a video game. We're like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. And we were just thinking this is all like goofy or whatever. But sure enough, like it ended up on like Tommy Lee's Real Life or whatever, like some MTV show, and like they used it on MTV a couple times, and we ended up getting a settlement check for like $800 because they used it unauthorized, and there was a big class action suit. A bunch of bands, so that was fun. That was like opening a lottery ticket. I was like, oh my god, it's here. It was $800. I was like, yeah, all right, whatever. It's not so bad. But yeah, so they were really good at making a real record, and Ben crushed at that. Matt Beckerman was really good at running a real label, and we gave them a good record. We just, by the time it came time to tour, and we did go out with Dillinger for like 6 weeks, but we just could never keep a band together. By this point, Dave Clank had left. We had Joe Brown, Bobby left. We replaced him with a fill-in guy that didn't work out. He left on tour. That was, we just weren't seeing eye to eye, and it was best that he leave the tour. And it felt like missed opportunity after missed opportunity. It's like, how many bands get that opportunity to like open the Dillinger tour when Dillinger is popping off as like just the rocket shooting through the ceiling at this point, and like we're opening it. It was like probably the most coveted spot of any tour that year, and we're on it, and like half of our band leaves, and we're like just like limping through shows as a 4-piece.
It's like the Philadelphia story, and I've been in that situation multiple times in bands where things are happening. You're like, this is it. Like all the year of effort we put into this thing.
This is what it's all about.
It's happening right now, and when you still can't like just hold it together, it's just like
we just couldn't keep it together. And I remember being on so during that tour, our buddy Joe, who rejoined the band later, basically told us he wasn't going to tour again when we got home. So it was back down to me, Luke, and Steve. At this point, like there was no one doing samples. The guy that we got to replace Bobby left. Joe joined on drums. Now he's leaving, and it's like, my God, like it's down to me. Like, so I remember on that tour we got an offer to go to Europe to open for Propane, which I mean that should have been a no-brainer. We should have just been like, it's got to be weird, but sure, let's do it. But we were just like, dude, we're not even a band right now. We're gonna get home and have to either stop or basically replace the whole band, other than Luke, Steve, and I. So we got home and took a couple weeks off, and like got together, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna keep going. And that's when we sort of solidified it. Like Joe stayed with the band. We had, like just sort of made an agreement, like, all right, we're gonna replace you if we tour. Like, so we worked it out with Joe, and we got Dave Davies, who's been in the band ever since, on guitar.
Yes.
And then we started writing. And that's when we got going into the material that became This Never Happened.
Now, would you consider that your greatest record? Because I noticed the sets are heavy. Now, there's a lot of hits on that record. A lot of hits, and I know you had some good videos come out of that, and
The biggest mistake we always and we make it to this day, is I don't know what our problem is, but we are so positive that everything we're doing is the last thing we're ever going to do. And we went into that record thinking it was going to be our last record just because of everything we had been through. And, you know, we're like, oh, well, we're probably not going to tour unless we find a different drummer, and we're probably not going to feel like doing that, and blah, blah, blah. And we were like, we don't even really love the old. Well, you got to keep in mind, too, it's like forever ago now. Even this era that I'm talking about is a long time ago. Like, we were fighting the fact that we're like, oh, it's failed. It's like, we're a different band than when we started. And, you know, now I look back on that as a great thing. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, it's cool. We've been like 5 different incarnations, and each one of them is special to me and like holds a place in my heart. But at the time when you're trying to like present like you know, you're trying to present your art and you want to be the next band and you want to get on the next tour, you know, we didn't love having a Most Bitter Season like hanging over our head at that point. This is like, we're not really that band anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we were fighting that a lot more at that time. We were like, maybe we should just like change it up and do a different band altogether. We went through that whole thing that you know, a lot of bands go through. But we were writing this stuff, so we were writing like some weird rocky songs that we were doing with Joe.
Now that's a question I have for you. Yeah, because you balance the more rock songs very well with the more chaotic songs.
Right.
And now, back in the day, in the early 2000s, I would call it like pulling a cave in. Because like you're a heavy band, and then you become a lighter band. And at the time, I hated it because like I felt betrayed.
Right, for sure.
And I don't feel that way anymore.
Right.
I mean, Cave In personally, I love every one of their records.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I wouldn't like it. So when you guys did that, was it like a conscious move? Like, all right, we're gonna write a lighter song, or like how did those discussions happen?
100% not a conscious decision. And it's funny you bring up Cave In because they're one of my favorite bands, and I way more partial to the radio rock version of Cave In myself.
Yeah.
But it is funny, like if you take them, and I think it's just a product of being young and thinking that everything has to move so linear, or that you can't get betrayed. You said the perfect word for it is like a betrayal. But if you look at it now backwards, you're like, their records, there's a clear line. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as crazy as it seemed.
And
at
it's
the
still
time,
heavy.
You know? Yeah, and
like it's even though it's quote unquote radio rock, it's too heavy for
it's
the radio
like,
still.
You know, like Until Your Heart Stops to Jupiter isn't that much of a leap. And Jupiter to Antenna isn't that much of a leap. It's, it's like it's all the same band, but it doesn't seem like it when you're living it. So as it applied to us, we were actually trying to start a different band. So we're still trying to figure out what we were going to do with Joe, and we had a bunch of like heavier songs that we started writing with Joe that we didn't really finish, and we asked Chris Penny if he would like help us finish them. So he came and like practiced like one weekend with us, and we drilled down and finished I think like 6 or 7 songs, and then the next week he came and we recorded them, and that was it. So that was going to be This Never Happened. But then we started, like, as we were sitting on that material and sort of finishing it, we were working things out. We actually had a different drummer, and it wasn't working out with him. We started playing with Joe again. We wrote like 3 or 4 songs that we were thinking were going to be a different band, and then we were like, fuck it, you want to just record those songs? And then we were like, fuck it, you want to just put them all on one album and call it Allelsefailed? You know what I mean? So it was definitely, it wasn't a conscious decision to be like, we're going to fuck with our fans and just start writing radio songs. But by the same token, it was going to be like a different project, but so it just sort of morphed into one thing.
Are there Chris Penny recorded songs on This Never Happened?
Yeah, he played like on 6 or 7 of the songs, and Joe Brown played on like 5 of the songs.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
that's a complete revelation.
After the show, we're going to do a breakdown and dive into
it. Yeah, like Chris is on like tracks 1 through 5, I think, or 4. Yeah,
that's
wow.
Yeah. But to Joe's credit, Joe's a monster too, man. Like, a lot of people don't know the difference, like the Joe songs from the Chris songs.
I had no idea.
You know, Chris is like the biggest monster in the game, but like Joe Brown was right. And a handful of the parts that we were showing Chris for the songs that we recorded with him, he was like, "What the fuck is Joe doing?" Like, you know what I mean? It was like, we're like, oh man, like maybe Joe's better than we thought. No, Joe Brown, JV is the man. We love Joe Brown. He actually took us like. He had just such a weird style, because the interesting thing was, and this is like where being in Allelsefailed occasionally was like an embarrassment of riches, because like he was a younger dude who grew up listening to Paul. He's like, I learned how to play drums listening to Paul play drums. So it's like, man, this is too easy. Come on. But he had such a flair and a style of his own. Like he brought this like shuffle on the snare drum that was just like, it made so many parts happen that otherwise were just kind of like normal parts, and like he just had a swing to him that was like different than anybody we had played with. So it was interesting, it was cool, And to have him and Chris on the same record, and a lot of people be like, I don't even know which one's which. It's like, it's a testament to Joe. It's Joe is that good for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about the first breakup that I witnessed. I remember there was some breakup. The last show was at Palanca Park.
Yes.
What year was that?
So that was as all of this was happening. So that was as This Never Happened was trying to, and that's sort of what the name even implied. Like there was a lot of like, last record, last show, in our mind we were starting the new stuff. So, and Chris Penny played that Palanca Park show with us, and that was to be our last show. At that point, I think we had recorded the songs with Chris that are on This Never Happened. I think that was already done, and we were starting to figure it out with Joe. So we were like, all right, well, we're going to bury All Else Failed, and we're going to focus on this new stuff with Joe. And that was probably 2003, maybe 2002 or 2003. And, it took a year or so to really get everything back together and feel good about playing with Joe again. There was never any big falling out, but it was just like, well, we were really struggling to find the same page for everybody because, that time of life, we were 26 or 27, and some guys want to go full bore and other guys want to start getting married, and other guys want to do different kinds of music. So no one could find the same page. And we finally sort of cobbled together the same page about a year later. So around 2004, we decided, the guy we started playing with again, we're like, all right, he was a short-termer guy, really nice guy, but just wasn't going to work out. So we got Joe back. Joe recorded the rocker songs, like Waterlide, Departing Flights. Those are Joe songs. Mm-hmm. We decided to go for it again. Yeah, we just were like, all right, screw it, let's go. And by this point, Dave Davies had already been in the band. Dave Davies is all over This Never Happened. He played on the whole record. But yeah, the five of us were back, and we started to, try to play out a little more again. Yeah,
and I lost track of you again, I would say until 2006. You played Philafunk live.
Yes.
Now, was there like a gap where you weren't playing, or had Luke moved to California?
So, no, Luke hadn't moved yet. But we, so This Never Happened was going to come out. It hadn't come out yet. 5 drummers, the whole Penny to the other guy to Joe thing had finally sort of worked itself out. And then at that time, Now or Never got sold to Century Media. So, and Century Media was really excited to now own the rights to a record that somebody from Dillinger Escape Ham played on. So we didn't want to do it at all. Honestly, we had a conference call with the owner of Century Media Records in Germany, basically telling him, this is cool and all, but like we're not really a Century Media band. We don't know what we're doing. We're like 20, we don't know how much longer we're going to be doing this. Can't really commit, and so we all sort of decided we will agree to this and do the record with you guys, but one thing we suck at, we're not very good at self-promotion. We're not very good at booking our own tours or anything like that. It's like, get us on good tours, and we'll go out and we'll crush it. And I think we did one tour for This Never Happened with Ed Gein, who will come up in the story later. But so, again, Joe wasn't going to tour, so we had to replace Joe again. We got Jimmy Rhodes.
Yes.
So the lineup became me, Luke, Steve, Dave Davies, and Jimmy. That lineup toured with Ed Gein, but there was nothing when we were on the tail end of that tour. There was the whole goal was to tour for This Never Happened for a year. About 6 weeks in, we realized there was no more tours and nothing. So we were like, all right, I guess we got to get jobs when we get home. And we just sort of decided to break up again. So that lineup played in 2006, and we wrote 1 or 2 songs. That became the Good Enough for the Girls We Roll With songs, the 3 new songs on that.
I remember I was very excited to see 173.
Yes.
And you did play it at Philafunk. But I hadn't been to a hardcore show in a while. But there was this guy there, I remember, I don't know who it was, but just crowd killing. Obnoxiously.
I feel that was a violent show, yeah.
It was very violent, and I was like, nothing has changed. I don't know why I'm still doing this. And I don't think I went to another hardcore show again for a while.
It was a great show. I remember it was a stacked lineup. And
I
remember
the show itself was great.
Yeah, I think at some point somebody, Luke's brother
got into a skirmish,
so it was... it was sort of a tense one. And then the next night we played up at ABC New Rio, and that was it. And we were like that point we were way more ready to be done with it. Like the breakup of a couple years earlier was probably us like throwing a temper tantrum, being a little premature, giving up on it. But that one was like, all right, we're done.
It's like in Seinfeld, he says, breaking up is like pushing over a Coke machine. You don't just push it over in one. You got to rock it back and forth a few times.
Exactly.
And then it falls over.
Then it falls over. So yeah, the Coke machine fell over in 2007.
So enter. This is where we linked up.
Yeah.
Now I remember, I met you through Centrifuge.
Yep.
Shout out Centrifuge.
Yep.
And I bought a
Sansamp pedal.
Yes. Right. Now I knew someone told me you were in All Else Failed.
Yes.
And I did not. So I went to buy it. And I pretended not to know that you were in the band.
I remember, so yeah, that was at my apartment, my basement apartment up in Malvern, I believe,
yes.
right?
And I bought the pedal, and then I was like talking about music with you for a minute, and I was like, what band were you in?
So, that's awesome. That's pretty funny. So what I had done prior to that was a band called Murder Texas, linked back up with Paul, the original All Else Failed drummer, and I loved that band. That band was really,
I tried out for an early incantation with that. Or wait, no, that was after. Wait, no.
That was somewhere in there.
I tried out, and then I think Murder Texas happened later. Do you remember that tryout?
I do. I remember you were on bass.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Now, what did you guys think? What was the discussion after that?
Well, I was into it, but we were still just trying to figure out what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And then Paul ended up doing something with, he did a band called Signal to Noise with Rob Avery and a buddy of ours named Jeff and this guy Matt Fleischman. Then that fell apart, but Paul and Matt were still playing, and me and my buddy Billy stepped in. And then it was like, well, they were actually already playing, and I came up, and I just love playing bass. For some reason, I just play it like an idiot. I just play it like a rhythm guitar. I'm no good at being a traditional bassist, but I think I come up with interesting things.
Yes.
So it just really clicked. But then the singer/guitar player of that band got like really good offers to go tour with. Like he knew Fred from Taking Back Sunday, and he ended up like filling in on like Warped Tour bands and ended up joining Fred's band. So Murder Texas sadly went south, but that's when you and I really linked up because, well, first off, that's when I sold you the Sansamp because I didn't have a need for it anymore because I wasn't playing bass anymore. Right. So that's when I sold you the Sansamp. But then around then, I think is when we first played.
Yeah, I was
didn't
trying
meet you before selling you that gear, so it couldn't have been before.
I was trying to put together a band that sounded like Quicksand, and
yes.
The guys,
which is everybody's doing now, but it was a very novel idea at the time for sure.
Now,
for sure.
The guys I was putting it together with, it just didn't work out. And you had been you messaged me, and you're like, let's just do it. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I got these guys. But then you just started a private message thread with a couple people in Centrifuge, and you're like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then we practiced. And I remember messaging you because I was such a fan of All Else Failed. I was like, I can't be in a band with you. Like I was like, I don't think I can do it because I can't play like.
Well, I always felt that you like. So what we ended up doing though was writing great songs, and it's like you weren't playing my part exactly, but that's the fun part is you were forced to come up with something over my part, and you did that fantastically. You did that as good as anybody ever has. So
that's definitely one of my favorite bands I've been in because that was the first time I've ever been in. That's the second band I've ever been in, but it finally was like. I'm writing.
Of 64. I was going to say this is Crash of 64. I was trying to like give some type of context.
So like. Yes, the band is called Crash of 64. Pat and I were in it, and it was the first time I was in a band that like. This is a band I want to be in. This is the sound I'm going for. It was working.
When I was, my goal with that band was initially to be like, I want to do Murder Texas, but with me playing guitar instead of bass. And then you were like. You joined on guitar, and we went through like you remember that like cycle of a bunch of different drummers. And I think even Mike from This Day Forward came down.
We had singer tryouts and drummer tryouts. We went through a
bunch of stuff. So then finally, Keith and I were like, well, why don't we just get the two best people at each position, drums and vocals that we know, and then we'll fill out the band later, and we'll just record with. And then they ended up sticking around, Paul and Mike.
Yes,
Mike Cummings from Backwoods Payback, now in All Else Failed.
Yes, and Paul formerly of.
All Else Failed and Murder Texas.
So we got together, and it was a lot of fun. Now here's an interesting question, and it's going to be kind of weird, but stick with me. Now, the band we lasted about a year. We were recording.
I thought maybe 2.
No, a year leading up to the first show, and then we played
for like a year. Yeah, I would say that's right.
So it was like a 2-year investment, and we were recording a new EP.
Mm-hmm.
And now. this was a time in my life where I was just grasping, trying to hold it all together. Like
Right.
I was getting out of control with like drinking and everything else that I was doing, and just really trying to hold it together, but not doing a great job. And, you know, this band was like everything I was putting my energy into. And I was also in like a weird relationship that was like not good, and I was obsessed with. So I'm like desperately trying to hold it all together. And I remember the band was kind of unraveling. You were going through some stuff. I think Mike was going through some stuff. And I don't think there was ever an end.
No, there
I
wasn't.
think we just.
Yeah.
I think I just said, "Are we practicing?" And it just kind of stopped.
It was that one was a weird, sad, slow death. for
Now,
sure.
in my
Yeah.
mind, because I'm paranoid, I created. Like I sometimes entertain this fantasy, like, "Oh, you were."
My man over here is cracking up. By
This is so.
This is what I do.
This is Keith in a nutshell.
I'd
is
love to hear it. I'd
Him
love
by
to hear it.
himself
Yeah.
in his own
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I was too out of control, so they ended the band
No.
to end it. So
that
what was there ever a discussion? Was there ever?
There was never a discussion.
Did it just stop?
We played, I think, once where Steve was going to come up and play bass with us.
He did.
And
One time.
One time.
Yeah.
And I guess we were just like, no. To answer your question, short answer, no, there was never a discussion. In retrospect, there were conversations about like, yeah, why did we just stop that? And I said exactly what you said. I was like, well, like Keith was kind of going off the deep end, and I was going through some shit, and Mike was, Backwoods picked back up, and Mike went over to Backwoods. And, it was never like, oh, Keith was way too much. No, it was never that. No, it was
make
always,
everything about me.
I mean, that was always one of the things. It was exactly how you rattled it off, and that's what everybody said.
I've had those conversations with Doug before, where I'm like, Keith is out of hand, bro. We got to do something.
It was what you exactly how you said it, but the thing was, there was never, and it was to our detriment. I was trying to recently put it back together. Mike is just so hard to pin down.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Now,
About what's that?
I
Crash
envision
64?
a New York gig, a Philly gig, a gig out in Westchester somewhere.
Let's start in the basement. Let's start in Mike's basement.
Yeah. So let's practice.
Yeah,
Let's get to that.
Let's start in the basement.
Folks, check out the Crash of 64 EP. It's called Reading Ghost Notes. Just search Crash of 64 on Spotify.
Yeah. To this day, that's track one on the month day is Jackie's favorite thing I've ever been a part of. That's the only thing she gives me any credit for. She's like, that song's badass. Everything else,
it really is.
Yeah,
and I remember learning the riff to that song, and I was like, what the it took so long.
That was cool. I was really happy to have but you dropped that lead line over it. It's ill, but like the arrangement wise, that's the first one. I was like, oh my god, that came out exactly how I wanted it arranged. Like, there was no real like pulling teeth with it or anything.
It was great.
That was a great era, but it was doomed to be short lived. But it was a really good band while it lasted, for sure.
And that's the only thing my dad ever gives me credit for, because he just automatically says like, I don't know why, but that EP,
that was a good one.
He loves it.
Yeah, we really hit a stride there on that, and the stuff we were writing after it was good too. But it was just like it was doomed to
that unreleased EP. There's some jams on there.
Yeah, we got. I don't even have it. Do you have it on MP3s? Yeah, I'd love to hear that stuff.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
but let's segue back into All Else Failed, picking back up now. Was this? This is Hardcore 2011?
This is Hardcore 2011, and
I remember you borrowed my guitar cabinet.
I think so.
For the gig.
Right.
So in my efforts to always insert myself into everything, like I remember nudging my friend in the crowd and being like,
that's my cat.
That's my cat. This is happening because of me.
So 2000 and let me think. Yeah, so 2011. So Joe Hardcore had always just been like, whenever you guys want. And, by the first, like, This is Hardcore, we were completely defunct. And then, so 2011, it moves over to the Starland Ballroom, I think. And I don't know why we decided that we were just like, I think it's the time. Like, there was no grand, like, oh, I ran into this guy at this, like, and we fell in love. It wasn't like we were all buddies still. We all still hung out and talked all the time. Luke had moved to LA by this point. But by this point, we were understanding that we could do music by code, what I mean? Joe made a very nice offer that was like, oh, we can fly Luke in. This is a real deal. This isn't like we're not gonna, get crushed money wise. Like, wow, we can do this. We decided that we wanted to do, like, we weren't just going to get back together and do a show. We wanted to write, because we had at this point like 4 years worth of heavy riffs just backlogged, and so we got together with Joe Brown, who was stoked to come play with us again, and we wrote. And at this point, we were much more on the same page with Joe. We were like, yeah, we're probably not touring. We're probably not doing anything like too crazy, but we want to do this record, and we're going to play some, This Is Hardcore. And he was super on board with that. So I think from April, May, and June, we wrote those 5 songs, recorded them. Luke was home for a little bit and did some of the vocals here, did some of the vocals out in LA. We pressed it and had it done and had it at This Is Hardcore. Like, we started again in April, and we had the 5-song EP at This Is Hardcore in July.
I remember that. That was a classic comeback. There's some amazing. It's just an amazing. Yeah. There's like good tracks on it, and
I think that's like 3 of the songs are like my favorite.
I remember you showing me an early version of the first track, and I was just like, "Whoa, that's happening."
Yeah, those ones. That one came out really good, and that just like kickstarted us. And ever since then, we've just been sort of taking it as like a one project at a time. It's like, okay, what's the next thing? Which is a much more sane way to do a band at our age, as opposed to like, we have to keep going. What's next? What's next?
Not
it's
the
like,
grind of like daily.
Now it's like, okay, we make a plan, we prepare for it, we do it, and then we chill, and then we make the next plan. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of like the way the band has been operating ever since.
So that's such an awesome way to get it done now, though.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I always thought about, like, I'm like, oh wait, Luke lives in California. I'm like, how am I gonna do any of this shit? And it's like, what you're saying really is it's so much more of a help, because you really are just like, here's a singular thing we're doing.
Exactly.
Let's work towards that.
And you can focus on it, and it's not like, oh, we're a band, so we have to like do we're doing these 3 comp tracks, and then we're going on tour for 6 weeks, and then it's like, no.
You're beholden
we're making
to nothing.
a plan. Yeah, exactly. Like, we pick and choose. Like, right now we have an offer that I think we're going to end up having to politely decline, but it's just coming up too soon, and I don't think we can make the dates happen, which is a shame, because it's a really cool offer. But it's nothing like that used to stress me out. Like, being like, we were so trajectory minded, like, oh, we gotta go, it's next thing, it's big, we gotta do it, and we gotta do the next big thing always, we gotta be the next big thing always, like, which is good. Like, that ambition gets you places when you're younger, but it just
but once that's gone,
out.
And you're just like accepting whatever's happening, it's like you can just enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. So like, we're hoping this coming July is our 25th anniversary.
Ooh.
So we started 25 years ago on July 4th in my parents' living room. They were on vacation. So I held band practices, and we got everybody together, and it was the first time me, Sesso, Steve, and Luke, and it was our buddy Dave was playing drums on that one. So 25 years ago, this July 4th.
That's unbelievable.
I don't think we're going to be able to make anything happen in July, but we might have like my new plan. If we can't do the offer I was just referring to, we might do something in like September to try to do something for that.
Now, post 2011, This Is Hardcore. I think that's when things really started to build for you again, I should say.
Totally.
Because I noticed a change, and I noticed, like, I would come see you no matter where you were playing or like what night of the week it was.
Right.
Tell us about, like, I mean, I feel like things changed between 2011 and now. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely feel, and this is no disrespect to Philadelphia. Philadelphia hardcore is like, where we're born and raised, but we never really felt until 2011 like we were really a Philly hardcore band, because, like, as I mentioned, those early years it wasn't easy, and then the next thing you know, we were like a national band, quote unquote, air quotes, national band, or doing national tours. Like, we never had like that, like, with maybe the exception of that one year I was talking about where we were playing like Lansdale every year, and then we would occasionally play Philly shows, but we were never like, it was never like it is now. Like, we would never, like, nowadays, if we book something, we're probably going to, do a 200 capacity room or whatever, and it's going to be great.
And it sells out instantly.
Yeah, like, it was never like that. So it feels like, and it's totally thanks to Joe and Sonny. Joe just being that dude that was there back in the day and was like, I can't believe more kids don't get you. Like, I remember him saying that to us, like, I don't know why more people don't get you, like,
exactly.
And so he always gave us like the open door. And when he started doing This Is Hardcore, he was always like, yeah, man, whenever you guys are back together, whenever you guys are ready to roll, hit me up, we'll do it. And he always gave us great slots, great, primetime slots. And so, I mean, Joe's as responsible for it as anybody, but also Sonny, just like starting to do what he does, which is just a whole different world, and just such a cool, interesting thing that he, I don't want to say created, but just perfected. He perfected that medium.
I love it, because it's like the centerpiece for hardcore bands, like one of them. Like, I discover so many bands through that, and just just to be able to go jump on there and see what's going on. I think it's great.
So it, like, the convergence of those two guys, just deciding that it was like our time. And we're like, okay, cool. Well, yeah, we'll play again. And then we booked a show. Like we did a couple dates with Boys That's Fire, who were also getting back together around that time. And then like we did a show with Joe. Let me think. I'm thinking it was the This Is Hardcore after party. We did an after show with like Zal, and I think this is 2014.
Yes,
maybe.
That was Zayo and
That was a great
who else?
show.
It was someone else.
So Zayo, All Else Failed. Shit, there was.
I think our buddies from Brooklyn opened at Tiger Flowers.
Yeah,
Was the opener, and there was a third band who's escaping me right now.
It was a great. I have a bunch of pictures from that night on my Instagram.
But
Yeah.
well, long story short, we were going up against a refused after party.
Oh.
And we were like, oh my God, we're gonna get buried. I mean, you know what I mean? No one's gonna come. But we sold out. We still sold out the Kung Fu Necktie. I mean, obviously
That's beautiful.
180 cap versus whatever it is refusal. But it was cool to be like, holy shit, like Philly kids like really want to see us. This is not like a it's not a fluke,
Yeah.
I feel like your shows, especially now that I'm older, have there's nothing I look forward to more than when Keith goes like, yo, All Else Failed is fucking
nice,
cool.
nice.
It's like
Because
church.
it
Like
is.
yeah, I look for it's a release. Everyone just pummels each other but helps each other.
Yeah.
It's this communal
It's just
you're like
such
going
a good vibe.
you're like going through a experience together.
Yeah, I feel like we definitely have that like a communal vibe kind of thing going now, which is cool. It's not violent or it's not physical, but it's not like dangerous. You
No,
know what I mean?
not
Like,
anymore.
Not
Which
anymore.
I love.
Not
Right,
in a way
right.
it used to be
Yeah.
like it'd be like, oh god, all right, here it comes. Like,
Yeah.
but
Right,
there's
right.
the cool part is like I have been to probably I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 over the last like 5 or 6 years where like every time I go I run into the same like dozen or so people.
Yeah.
There's a girl that's from Trenton, I think.
Okay.
That's like she always has like Carhartt gear on.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's
She,
Katie. Yeah,
she
yeah.
is the nicest
Yeah.
person in the world, and every time I go to All Else, she's there.
Yeah.
Without
Yes.
fail,
Yeah,
she's
she's
there, and
yeah.
I'm like, I've hit her so many times.
Yeah.
I've bashed into her, and she'll like look over at me, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
But people like help each other out, and people aren't
Yeah.
just crowd killing. It's
No.
like
Yeah.
it's very,
No.
Yeah.
it's very, it's like it's not dangerous anymore, which I appreciate.
But I also feel that like a lot of what makes it cool is that now we are like sort of all of our eras. You know what I mean? It's like now it's like people get it that we could pull songs from any different era, but it's all like this band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's always been like a real special thing was like getting it to this point has been special. Not really necessarily the scale but we never really had like a clear vision. We never really had like an end goal. We were just like, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. So for it to stop for a long time and then get to be able to do it again, like after a 5-year break, and have it be much more like not a linear, but like a more relaxed pace where it's just like thing to thing to thing. And like each time it's like, oh, wow, it is getting like bigger now. Like, how is that possible? How do more people care about us now than
It's the
when we were,
classic
like,
Philadelphia story.
when we were like living and dying with it, and like when it was literally all we did, like we eat, slept, breathed, drank, All Else Failed from the time I was like, band started when I was 19 and until I was like 26 or 27. That was it. That's all I did was like for 8-9 years, and then it was gone, and now it's like back and it's better now that I don't not give a shit about it, but now that it's not like a huge like thing, now that I think it made us all just look at it more rationally. Like you can go insane when you're trying to do like a passion project.
Oh, yeah.
You're trying to like
It's
make
not
your
primary
life.
anymore.
Yeah,
It's now something that's like, this is something I legitimately love,
Right.
and I'm doing it with people I really want to be with.
Right. Whereas we would be at each other's throats because if it's all you're living for, then if you feel that somebody's screwing it up in some way, you get irrationally pissed at them, and that's not. And I've been on the ass end of that. I've been the guy pissing. I'm sure I've been the guy pissing people off. But to have it now where it's like somehow or another, that band needed to be less important to us. It was unhealthy that the band was as important to us as it was for that extended period of time.
Right. So let's talk too about Hold Down the Ocean.
Yeah.
Now, Hold Down the Ocean is another band with members of All Else Failed. I
Yep.
think it's everyone but Luke, and then you have another guitar player.
Yep. So
It's like a shoegazy post rock thing,
Yeah.
which is right up my alley. Let's talk about how that came together.
So Hold Down the Ocean is like my like real passion project right now. Not that we're passionate about everything we do, but like where my head is right now musically is more Hold Down the Ocean. And that just came out of so recently, like after, so we All Is Failed got back together, we did the EP 2014 or so. We did 2 songs, a 7-inch, which is really good too. I'm really happy with that.
That's Cradles and Graves.
Cradles and Graves.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, those are two
of my favorites.
Those are 2 of the favorites, and 3 of the 5 on Wouldn't Wish, which is the EP, are probably like in my top 5 of my top 10 All Is Failed songs of all time. So very underrated. If you're listening to this as an old All Is Failed fan that hasn't checked out the later era stuff, get into it.
Both are on Spotify.
Yes.
Do it now.
Yes.
So we sort of hit a spot where like, and then we did a song that was on a split that was just like from a leftover session, but we just weren't writing as All Is Failed anymore. We just sort of made the decision. We're like, okay, let's not write anymore for at least the extended. And we knew that All Is Failed was going to be like a once a year kind of thing, maybe twice a year kind of thing. But Steve and I, we were a little more lifers, and we we're like, let's keep something moving. Let's keep going. Let's do something different. And he's really like more into what like the kind of stuff you're into, like the posty, like Explosions in the Sky,
yes,
Mogwai, Caspian, all that stuff. Like he's in that world, and I'm more into like the singer-songwriter world of like Red House Painters, like the real like 4AD, like sad stuff. And we were each going to like start our own thing that we were each going to help, and we were like, I just want to do a band. So
why divide up?
Joe was already playing with Steve, so they had 1 or 2 things worked out, and I came in and truthfully, we may have asked Dave Davies, but he lives in Virginia, and we were trying to like broaden our horizons a little bit. We were thinking of keeping a 3-piece, but I was like, my man Dan is all over. Like he's in your guys' world. He's just like really like into tone and like getting a good sound, and like has the pedals that I don't have. And
there needs to be one guy with a couple pedals, and then there needs to be the other guy with like all of them.
Yeah, and he's like, so as we were starting, and we didn't want to be a 5-piece. We knew that for sure.
Yeah. I would never be. I wouldn't even know if I'd be in a 4-piece again.
Well, Steve wanted to do like a 3 situation, but I was like, I can't sing and play. Trust me. Let me bring my man Dan out. You're going to get along with him great. So we brought Dan, and he's been there ever since. And it's been the 4 of us, and it's great. I love it. I mean, we're on a bit of a hiatus. Not really anybody's fault or anything, but we're like recording the All Is Failed stuff when we went to Europe with Boys That's Fire. That sort of like put Ocean on hold. So we were recording before we left. Did that, and now we're finishing recording. So it's like we haven't actually played. It feels like in 8 months or whatever, but it's still going. Yeah, we're going to finish a record. We're finishing actually an EP and an LP at the same time.
Ooh,
yeah, so that'll be fancy.
How's that going to work?
I'm not sure,
but you're going to have it at least.
Yeah, it's almost done. I think we have like a handful of music sessions left, just for like odds and like keys and stuff. And I have to do vocals for 2 more songs, and then that'll be done. And I think we actually just booked the first show in a minute in May. So that'll be the first show since like last summer. So yeah, unfortunately, we're not.
Are you allowed to say where it is yet?
Yeah, we're 1984 in Delaware. I don't know if it's been announced yet, but I think it's a bar in Delaware near Oddity Bar.
Okay.
North Wilmington area. Cool place. They have retro video games.
Nice. So you guys got to get up to New York too,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, we got to do that.
There was the All Else Failed gig in at St. Vitus.
Yes.
Now with that was a sold out gig with Boys That's Fire. That was a lot of fun, and how was it to play there? That's like that's like on my bucket list to somehow play one day.
That lived up to the hype, man. Like, anytime you hear of a hype venue like that, you're like, oh, they must be great. And we got up there, and they couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have sounded better. It was like, it's like, all right, there's a clear reason why this is the place to be. You know,
most of the shows I go to end up being there, and I love that people want to play there too, because like whenever there's a big tour coming through, the band will want to play there.
Yeah, that's where it's got to be.
So I'll get to see the little show at St. Vitus. I live pretty close to it, and then like, if I want to go to the big show, I can do that too.
Vitus is the spot. So that weekend came about. We really like rekindled a friendship with Boys That's Fire. Those guys, we've been playing with them forever. They just had their 25-year anniversary. We're about to have ours. So in the early days, we played together a lot, and then we just sort of went our separate ways into our separate worlds. But then they got, obviously went through a lot of the same similar things that we went through and what all bands go through. And started getting back together right around the same time we did, and we ended up doing we did a Delaware, Westchester, New York thing with them. Like 5 years. Life Once Lost was part of that. It was weird. We did like Delaware and Westchester with Boy Sets Fire, and
I remember that.
Westchester and New York with Life Once Lost.
Yeah,
like
I was at Westchester, and I was supposed to come to the New York show, but I had a very interesting night the night before.
In Westchester.
Doug, I lived with Doug from A Life Once Lost, and he just assumed I didn't want to be woken up for the show. Maybe it was for the better.
Might have been for the better.
And I didn't end up going, but I did get to play ABC No Rio once, which I'm glad because that's
ABC's
like a classic
awesome.
venue.
Yeah, that was we had our buddy Diami booked us there.
That's who booked me there too.
5 or 7 times.
Yeah.
Dude, he's just fantastic. He booked us at Vitus, so he started booking over at Vitus now. And he booked the Boy Sets Fire All's Failed thing from 2 years ago. Long story short, we just late. It's weird to be late and like. I'm sure people are like, oh, All's Failed and Boy Sets Fire, they've been boys forever. It's like, I mean, yes and no. Yes, but like we really just sort of rekindled it, within the past like 4 or 5 years. And coincidentally, their bass player lives in Westchester and is now like one of my best friends. Like it just, met him totally random. He's like, oh yeah, I'm in Boy Sets Fire. Because they had a few different bass players, but their current bass player and a guy that goes out with him on every tour does Chad's guitar tech, Gene, is like my best friend. So it's like every weekend we're in Westchester, like, when's the next Boy Sets Fire All's Failed thing? He's like, I don't know, man, you tell me. He's like, I'll text him right now. It's like, all right, do it. Let's go. What are we doing?
I still fantasize. I'm like, I should just move back to Philly and like get in with those guys and like play music.
We will start something.
Yes. If there's ever an opening for like Hype Man or Fog Machine guy in All's Failed.
In All's Failed.
Well, I'm gonna slide my resume in.
We're back up to 6 in All's Failed with Mike. So Mike joined just sort of super organically because in that time frame I was telling you when we first got back together and decided to do the EP in 2011. Prior to This Is Hardcore, we didn't have a place to play, and we didn't know, and no studio, nothing. We didn't know who was going to play drums for us. So we just asked Mike if we could borrow the basement, and Joe Brown came up, and me, Steve, and Joe Brown. And that's where we wrote track 1 off of that. So Mike was like, "Dude, this is my basement. This is what it's here for, man. Everybody plays down here. Just play."
Yeah.
So All's Failed started playing there, and then few beers deep, Mike could come down and like sing a song. We're like, it's like, hey Mike, could you like do this like sample part while we work this out? And then you would do that, and they were like, Mike, you coming to the show, right? Mind being like on stage, like, and just like like hand Luke the acoustic guitar when like all good things is there, and it's like, Mike, do you want to just play the acoustic guitar part? So it was like super organic, but now it's like, dude, he's as in the band as anybody right now.
And I love that because just getting to play with him was awesome, and seeing him in there now, I'm like, oh, the family is all together.
Yeah,
like,
it's good.
I love it.
And that's how it is. It's like you said the right word. It's like we feel like we're a touring family. You know what I mean? And it's like when we toured Europe. I mean, that was just on such a crazy level of something.
Those shows looked huge.
Yeah, they were insane. Boy Sets Fire is honestly like Jimmy Eat World over there. It's unbelievable.
What were how was like your reception over there?
It was mixed. Some people were a little surprised. We got a lot of really nice positive words said about us. I feel like the Boy Sets Fire guys loved us because it was like kind of showing their crowd where they came from a little bit. You know what I mean? But I don't necessarily know that everybody got it. But we did well. I mean, we sold well. We like. People said nice things, but there were times you'd look up and be like, "Oh, we're killing it," and you look, and it's just like blank stares. You're like, "Oh, how are they not feeling this?"
It's to remind you of the old days.
Yeah, for sure.
To keep you in line.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there was never a point. The point of it was like it was a crazy whirlwind experience, and it was done with like 8 guys in a very small Sprinter van.
That's incredible. Yeah,
and no one, like, to my knowledge, no one fought or any, like, there was no. No nothing, no drama whatsoever. It was all love, and there was a lot of points just driving through. You're like, you fucking believe we're doing this? Like, we finally got over here. After all these years, 25 years.
years deep.
That was one of
because I remember you talking about that potential tour back in like 2011.
Oh yeah. Well, we got offered it. So they do a fest over there, and they've basically given us the open invite. And like 2 or 3 years ago, they were like. So they just go over and do the fest and come home. But 2 or 3 years ago, they were like, no, like for our 25th, we're going to actually do a tour, and you guys should come and do that. So we've been like actually planning it. Like we've been talking about going over there with them forever, but the actual planning for this one was like 2 years long. And it seems weird to plan 2 years for 8 shows, but it was worth it. It was definitely it was unbelievable.
Absolutely. And Hold Down the Ocean had a big tour with
Yeah, we went out with Me Without You. It was like the same week a year prior, and I love those guys so much. I'm sad to see they're breaking up, Me Without You.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are our soul from the old Upper Darby days, man. Like, I remember going. It's funny, as I was coming down here, so I live in Drexel Hill, which is part of Upper Darby, and every time I come down to Philadelphia, I always like to swing by my parents' house, and my dad drives me to the 69th Street Terminal so I can take the L in.
Nice.
Because I do loathe parking down here, but
yeah, parking around here is very expensive and difficult.
Yes. So, and it's also gives me a good 20 minutes to catch up with my pops, and I think they love to do it because they love to feel like they're helping me out, which they are. It's a genuine thing. So, but taking the L in, it was just like, as my dad would drive me, he like kind of whipped around the Speakeasy and Sound Under, which is like where we used to practice, and Speakeasy was around the corner where we played all of our first shows. And right across the street from that was like the church where the Me Without You guys like first like started playing, like I think as that unit, but we knew them from like the Speakeasy too. So it was like what they took, and I think there was always like some weird, it was never resentment, but just like, wow, like we just didn't get it. We were like, yeah, those guys are good, but like why? And then and then I guess it was maybe 2 or 3 records ago, they did a song called Red Cow, and I was just like, holy shit. Like, and then I revisited the old stuff. I was like, I'm an idiot. How did I not get it? You know what I mean? Like,
some bands just take a while for you to for it to click.
Yeah. Well, and it was never out of any like jealousy or resentment or anger, but I was just like, man, I'm like, it's cool, but I'm not sure. And then once it clicked, I was like, geez.
Yeah.
So at the Nick benefit, where we were playing, Mike was playing with I Hate You, and we just like hit it off for a minute. And then I just messaged him a few weeks later as they were setting up the tour for what sadly is going to be, I guess, their last record, which is a bummer.
I heard a song off that record, and it was like right up my alley.
Unbelievable.
The hum and
Julia. It's called. Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
They're so criminally underrated now. Now that I've gone back and done a deep dive, now I'm the other way. I'm like, they should have been 10 times bigger than they were. It's unbelievable how good they are.
Yes.
And Aaron is just so enigmatic. Mike is just an absolute pro. The whole band. Greg is like my favorite dude to like just hang. Like touring with those guys was such a pleasure. Just to see like Greg at the venue every day would just like, I don't know, I would just start laughing and smiling and be like, yeah, what's up, dude? Like he's such a positive. They're also positive, but it's not like, I don't know if you don't even get the slightest hint that it's that fake positivity. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's all just like,
they're just
like,
genuine.
my God, these guys are so genuinely nice and cool, and they're such an unbelievably good band. It's like, I was so bummed when they made the announcement that I think they have like 2 tours left and then they're going to wrap it up. But it's a bummer. It's a shame because they're Upper Darby, born and bred, man. That's it. Yeah.
That's your hood.
That's our hood.
Doylestown.
That's it. Doylestown.
Doylestown, Upper Darby.
The running theme.
Yeah,
but
if it's not Upper Darby, it's Doylestown. Yeah.
So Hold Down the Ocean, we can look forward to an LP and an EP.
Yep.
We don't know in what order. Or do we?
Possibly the EP first and then the LP like a week later. They're sort of tied in. They have similar names. I don't want to give it all away, but
don't yet. Now that's a question I meant to ask. Has there ever been a theme to an All Else Failed record, or do you kind of take it song by song?
Way more song by song, because like I'll write some of them and Luke will write some of them.
Mm-hmm.
This Never Happened had sort of a very, very loose theme, but it wasn't anything we stuck to. Like there's songs that aren't in the same theme. Yeah. The Ocean stuff coming up is like the EP is a straight up concept EP, like all 5 songs tell a story, which is something new for me. I've never really worked like that before, so that'll be interesting.
That was a first for me. Well, Basement Year is the first time I fronted a band and wrote almost everything, and it just ended up being the story of me getting my life together.
Yeah,
because
that definitely came through.
I used to be crazy, and get high and drunk all the time, and I had to get away from that, and it just kind of ended up being the story of that time, and
No, I definitely felt that for sure. That came through in the tracks I heard, and I hope you get to flesh it out. Are you going to keep going with that project?
Well, we Tommy is going to play bass for the band. I
Okay.
want to continue as a 3-piece, and Paul said he's going to do it.
Okay, cool.
He doesn't know this, but we're going to call him live on the show.
Nice.
And
Right now?
and ask him if he wants to
Sounds good.
still be in the band. So what is next for All Else Failed?
For All Else Failed, next we really to be determined. We have like an offer for a weekend of shows that unfortunately I think we're going to have to pass on. That would have been pretty cool, but it would have been like a cool DC, Philly, New York, Boston run, which is something we want to do. Despite it not working out on this run, I think we're going to try to do something like that maybe in the fall around our 25 year. So the great thing is, like I mentioned before, we take it sort of like segment to segment or project to project. So we have like a list of projects we want to do. We just don't know what order we're going to get to them and when we're going to. We sort of had an offer for Japan that kind of like was like, whoa, that would be cool. We definitely want to go to the West Coast again to make Luke's life a little easier and do shows over there. So there's like things like that. We don't really have anything concrete. We just sort of have this like loose idea of the handful of things we want to do with however many years we have left. We don't put finite things like I was joking about how we don't do that anymore. But realistically, we're all like in our early 40s at this point. I'm about to turn 44. Well, Luke, Steve, and I are all born within a month or two of each other, so we're all about to turn 44. And so we figure we have probably a good 6 or 7 years left before it might start to be a little too painful.
Those shows seem to take a lot out of everybody.
And but 6 or 7 years, that's like what, 10 more things. So
it's
like
new releases maybe.
I think there's nothing planned at all, and there's not like pretty much most of my writing goes into Ocean, but I would be surprised if we never did another All Else Failed song. I would have to think there's going to be, there's going to be some riffs that jump out at some point. You'll be like, all right, I need to let me get Brown on the phone here and get some drums behind this or something like. That's nothing at all planned. But I would be stunned if there's never another All Else Failed song written.
All right. Well, we look forward to that. Well, Pat, I just want to thank you for coming by and
no problem.
Thank you so much.
All Else Failed shows, like we were mentioning before, are just so important to us. It's the only band I go off for like that.
Nice.
Stage diving and yelling and just going crazy like that. And, it's just like, it's an experience like no other. And as long as I'm physically able and I can do it, I'll be down here to attend them. And hopefully there's more in New York and West Coast.
That's so rad. I think there will be. And, we're going to keep doing it as long as we can. And I thank you guys. And I thank, everybody in Philadelphia that was ever, I think I made a mention once to Sonny or somebody. I was like, we always sort of wonder. I was like, wow, why don't more people outside of Philadelphia get it? But then, like later in life, I sort of cherish the role of being like Philadelphia's like secret handshake kind of thing. That's sort of what we are in a lot of ways. Like I kind of like that if you don't get it, you don't get it. If you get it, you're there and you're into it. So that's kind of where like the groove we've fallen into, and I'm cool with it. So.
I was gonna say I've met people before where like I have the Route 1 pin on my backpack at school, and then we had a teacher come in and they were like doing an interview, and they were like, Route 1, yo, is that from All Else Failed?
That's awesome.
Hire this motherfucker.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So I mean, we definitely have that like little club, and every now and again I'll get somebody to be like, did you see the rules of attraction with that bumper sticker? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, do you think anybody outside of Philadelphia has any idea what that means? Probably not, but it's cool. It's cool. But yeah, we're sort of we're at peace with that being our role in this little corner of our little subculture. You know what I mean? Like we're that Philadelphia band, and that's it. I'm cool with it.
It's a big role to me and many others. So we thank you again for being here. And folks, check them out on Spotify. They've got releases up there. They've got everything up on Bandcamp. Do you have something in there so people can throw you a couple bucks too?
Bandcamp, yeah. I think both Hold Down the Ocean and All Else Failed both, I believe, can the downloads.
Or at least order a shirt or a record or something.
All of the music is downloadable. Actually, I would go to Bandcamp because our best record, This Never Happens, is not on Spotify.
Yes. The best stuff is not on Spotify.
Yeah, so
Good enough for the girls we roll with is up there.
On Spotify.
But everything is on Bandcamp, so go check it out. All right, thank you, and that's it.
Thanks, Keith.
There you have it, folks. The Pat Shannon interview. That was a great one. And that is the 3rd episode of the Northeast Scene podcast. Once again, follow us on Instagram, the NE Scene on Instagram. Reach out to us through email, northeastscene@gmail.com. That's northeastscene@gmail.com. Share your stories with us, your experiences. Talk about the venue in your town, the bands in your town, tours where you were on. We want to hear from you. We want to share your stories as well. Also, like us on Instagram, like us on iTunes and Spotify. Give us 5 stars, comment on the podcast. It all goes a long way. So thanks again for joining us, and until next time.